All right, welcome back to the Vendetta Sports Fantasy Show. This is your host, Trey Daubert. With me, new writer, Cayne. What's going on today?
How you doing,
Introduce
guys?
yourself. What can the people expect here?
Hi, my name's Cayne Lander. I'm a Canadian football player from Mount Allison University. I'll be writing on, NFL, fantasy football, college football, all that stuff. I'm a Patriots fan, Michigan fan. Yeah.
Make sure to follow Cayne on social media where you can. What's your Twitter handle again?
It's just at Cayne Lander.
There we go. Cayne should hopefully be a big addition for us moving forward. So this is your first sort of chance to get to know him and his opinions. So before I start here, news of the day, the site is shut down because we had too much traffic to the point where we were slowing every site on the internet down. I guess I'll start with some thoughts here. It is kind of crazy that we're at this point 2 years into things. I sort of hoped to get to this point. I was confident that we would get to this point. But now that it's here, it is insane. Whenever advertisers are ready to call me, I'm available. It's a matter of time. So if you're smart, get in on the action now. Cayne, you're new to this experience, so I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. On a wild day.
I definitely decided to join at the right time here. I think I messaged you, Trey. I guess it would have been like Monday, and hey, by Thursday we broke the internet. So not too bad of a week one.
Yeah. So for now, we will be posting videos on the YouTube channel. The site should be up hopefully by the time this is posted, but we got a 24-hour window, so that's what's going on right now. It's something. But anyway, for this episode of the Fantasy Show, we have 3 different topics here for you. The first being the Derrius Guice news. He was released after his domestic violence incident. Cayne, what are your initial thoughts here? And if you had to pick one running back in Washington that you think will take over the lead role, who is it?
Well, I don't know if he's going to take over the lead role. I think it's going to be pretty evenly spread out. But I think Adrian Peterson is the clear favorite to start. But also the rookie, the third-round pick out of Memphis, Antonio Gibson. Obviously measurably, he's 6'3", 228. Kind of what you want in a running back. Big legs, big butt, skinny waist. He looks like the guy for sure. And the other thing that makes me think that Antonio Gibson's going to get a lot of touches is that Scott Turner's offense kind of needs a dynamic pass-catching running back. In his offense, it would be extremely limited if, Adrian Peterson started and they were trying to run routes with Adrian Peterson and do that kind of thing, because he's never really been a receiving threat. He's sort of your classic, downhill runner. And he's not getting any younger. So chances of him getting more dynamic in the pass game than he has been in the past are probably low. Antonio Gibson is probably the one that stands to gain the most from Derrius Guice's release. And I think it's a good situation for him too, fantasy-wise. I think that, Ron Rivera just came off of a team where he, finished doing a couple of years with Christian McCaffrey and used him in a great way, highlighted his strengths and minimized his weaknesses. And Antonio Gibson, I see a lot of Christian McCaffrey in Antonio Gibson. At Memphis, he was sort of a hybrid. He wasn't necessarily a receiving back. He lined up a receiver, lined up a running back, and I think Rivera is going to make use of that versatility.
I agree with you and disagree with you at the same time. And I want to give you a chance to counter too, because I think you're right. The answer is Adrian Peterson. At the end of the year, we will look back and he will lead the team in rushing yards, and he will lead the team in probably rushing touchdowns.
Right.
However, I don't think Antonio Gibson is good, and I'm sure they want to use him. I'll throw this to you, and I don't know how big of a college football fan you are. he had some big like efficiency numbers. I think he's Tony Pollard. I think he's fine. I don't think this is a guy that's going to turn into an every down workhorse back to where the Redskins got themselves a steal in the third round and they can count on consistent starter out of him. I don't see that's happening.
No, definitely not. And I mean, I'm looking at the PFF draft profile on him right now. And one thing they say is that his numbers are great for the amount of touches he got, but likely not sustainable if he got more touches.
And that's my point. I don't think he was the best running back at Memphis. I think there's a reason why he didn't get touches.
Right. And I mean, he was a dynamic athlete and he is a dynamic athlete. And like I said at the beginning, I think the guy, quote unquote, is Adrian Peterson. Like the guy we'll see line up with the first snap in week 1 is probably Adrian Peterson. But I think they're going to want, when I say the person who stands to gain the most from Guice leaving, because before it was probably going to be, pretty heavy into Derrius Guice and Adrian Peterson as the sort of 1-2 punch there in Washington. Right now, it could probably be, they're probably excited to be able to use Adrian Peterson to be your more traditional straight line, hand him the rock 15 to 20 times a game type running back. And then you could see Antonio Gibson sort of come out and add that versatility a little bit. I think, honestly, if I had to do an NFL comp, it'd probably be Ty Montgomery. Maybe not quite as good.
Oh, great. We got Ty Montgomery.
I mean, not super high praise, I guess, but one thing you can say about Ty Montgomery is he did add a little bit of versatility to that offense in Green Bay. And I mean, that's really the way the game is moving now. I mean, Christian McCaffrey really knocked the door open for a lot of these guys who are, your less traditional running back, like your tweener almost, like not quite the guy who's going to line up and run it down your throat 30 times a game, but and also not quite the guy who is going to line up in the slot every snap, but definitely capable in both areas. I think that's what Antonio Gibson's going to be. And I mean, you can't really argue with his mix of, size and speed. And he ran a 4.3, 4.38, 4.39.
He ran pretty fast.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think they'll just, now that there's not necessarily a clear-cut number 2, I just think they'll make a lot more use of Antonio Gibson's versatility than they would have if Derrius Guice was on the roster. So.
I want to actually bring up a different name because, again, this will depend on health. But I think if he's healthy, this is the right answer. I think it's Bryce Love.
Yeah.
Bryce Love should have been a first-round pick if he did not get injured. This is a guy that I think we sort of forget this. Christian McCaffrey was at Stanford. When he left, we're like, who's this Bryce Love guy? He may be better. Now, you say that now, it's like, huh? What? It was true.
Yeah.
This is a guy that ran for over 2,000 yards at Stanford.
Right.
He was incredible at Stanford, and he's always had elite speed for the position and can make guys miss.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he's healthy. I could be totally wrong here because we haven't seen the guy play in a while. Mm-hmm. But if he's good to go, I think that's the guy I would take, like his flyer situation. We don't know what's going to happen. Right. But if I'm rolling the dice on anybody, it's him.
Yeah, see, I'm not, especially with ACL tears, and maybe this is just because, like, playing football and, like, still being in football and stuff, I've seen a bunch of ACL tears and just how difficult it is for guys to come back from that. And that's at, the U Sports level, not at the NFL level or the, D1 level. So, I mean, I'm just scared that he might overdo it. He spent the whole year last year on the bench, like sideline because of an ACL tear. And it's not easy to come back from. Like most guys that tear their ACL aren't the same after, I would say. More often than not. You see guys tear an ACL and they come back and they might be okay, but they're not quite the same as they were before in the NFL.
I also think it depends on the person because Adrian Peterson came back and maybe he's just an alien.
Yeah.
So who knows? I don't know if the guy's going to be healthy.
Yeah.
But if he's 95% of what he was, that's the guy I want to take a flyer on.
Yeah. And I mean, it was definitely a great value pick at the time, right? Like I said, I was a big Bryce Love guy when he was at Stanford. I loved watching him play. Honestly, he was the kind of guy that steps on the field and he's the best player on the field every time he steps out there. And wasn't he did he get second or third in the Heisman voting?
I believe he got second.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, that's, as a running back now, especially, like, however many of the past years Heismans have all been quarterbacks. So it's kind of hard for a running back to, break in there. And it was impressive when like Derrick Henry did it. And it's, even more impressive, I think, when Bryce Love was, second in the voting out of Stanford, no less. Not in the SEC,
Yeah.
not in the Big Ten, like Stanford. So I think that's pretty impressive. And I mean, just watch the film of him in college. Like he was explosive. So I definitely agree with you on that. I wouldn't be willing to roll the dice on a guy that's just coming off an ACL tear. That's all.
Topic number 2 here. We're going to dive into fantasy fortune teller. We're going to do 3 each here. And the concept for this segment is we're going to talk about players you feel confident about. I want exact touchdowns, what he's going to do, how many rushing yards, receiving yards, passing yards. I want exact breakdowns of how confident you feel in this player next year. Let's get your pick number 1 here. What do you have?
Pick number 1's Adam Thielen. So with obviously the departure of Stephon Diggs to the Bills, we have about on that Vikings team, there's about 90 to 95 receptions that need to be made up for there. And the answer there is either, Justin Jefferson, who may or may not be good to go week 1 or however long because, he just got off the COVID-19 list. So who knows with all that. And also he's a rookie. So who knows if he'll even pan out in the first place. It wasn't too long ago that they drafted, Laquan Treadwell, who, it has kind of the same measurables and is kind of the same receiver as Justin Jefferson was, and didn't pan out at all. So I think Adam Thielen, the numbers aren't quite as good as maybe you'd think, but because he is coming off, a season where he was pretty much injured the whole time. But I think he's going to have 100 catches, 1,100 yards, and 9 receiving touchdowns. And part of that is also because, they've transitioned to sort of a low volume passing attack, where they obviously run the ball more. Dalvin Cook's a stud, so they're going to hand it to him all the time. But yeah, the other thing about Adam Thielen's, a good thing for fantasy owners is that you could probably get him a little bit later than you would be able to get other receivers that'll get that kind of production. Like you can get him a little later than DeAndre Hopkins or Mike Evans or anybody like that. Like you could probably get Adam Thielen as late as the 4th or 5th round if you play it properly and depending who you're playing with. So yeah, that's my first pick. I'm confident that Adam Thielen will come back swinging this year off of injury, and that he'll have at least 100 catches, at least 100 yards receiving, and at least 9 touchdowns.
See, we did a fantasy wild card segment maybe a month ago. This is where I would have put Thielen on a wild card because I can be swayed here. I don't necessarily know what's going to happen. So for you to say that you're confident in Thielen moving forward this year is something that I could be swayed on. I think you could be right here. He's the clear number 1 target. Kirk Cousins has shown the fact that you might not like him, but the guy puts up stats every year.
Right.
I'm kind of worried if it's a super heavy run first offense, but losing Stephon Diggs, Thielen's going to get targets, a shit ton of targets.
Right.
So he could easily be a value this year, no doubt.
And that's my point, because they're going to look his way no matter what. They have to, realistically. They don't have, that 1-2 punch at receiver anymore. So if there was, I would have put him more at a wild card any year before this when they had Stephon Diggs, because who knows how Stephon Diggs is going to play and how that fits into how Adam Thielen's going to play and whatnot. So, I'm more sure of Adam Thielen this year just because I think Kirk Cousins really likes to get it to the guys he wants to get it to. He's not really the kind of guy that likes to, dish the ball out to a billion different people. You can definitely see on the field on Sundays who he trusts the most by who he targets. So I think Adam Thielen's a clear-cut number 1 here, and I think he's going to be an elite fantasy receiver this year.
You talked about the Vikings, so I'm going to stay on this path here. My pick number 1 is going to be Dalvin Cook, and my fortune teller is he will lead the NFL in rushing yards this year. Now, a lot of people point to the fact that, oh my God, they lost Kevin Stefanski. What if it's a good thing? Their new offensive coordinator is now Gary Kubiak. Gary Kubiak took Joe Flacco to the AFC title game. Gary Kubiak turned Steve Slayton into a 1,000-yard rusher. Gary Kubiak turned, Arian Foster into one of the best running backs in the NFL. He was undrafted. Gary Kubiak is a disciple of Mike Shanahan. We talk about Kyle Shanahan, and we love Kyle Shanahan. Everybody loves Kyle Shanahan. Gary Kubiak comes from that same system. They will run that zone rushing scheme, and Dalvin Cook is going to get a shit ton of yards. And he led the NFL this year in screen passes attempted to. Nobody got more screen passes than Dalvin Cook last year. I think he'll be healthy. He's in a contract year to prove he deserves to be paid. And I think the Vikings are a run-first team. This is a back that's always been efficient. He's up at near the 5 yards a carry mark every year. Dalvin Cook leads the NFL in rushing yards this year.
I mean, I don't know if I agree with him leading the league in rushing yards, but I definitely agree with everything you said about Gary Kubiak. The other thing that's interesting about that, too, is that now, I mean, they haven't had this for a while, I guess, but now they have 2 good tight ends that they can line up on both sides of the line.
And both can block.
Them out, right? Irv Smith Jr., great blocker, great tight end, and Kyle Rudolph, obviously, he's a bit of a veteran now. He's a little bit older, but still very capable in the pass game and in the run game. So I definitely, it's a great situation for Dalvin Cook. I just think, he's not as good as Zeke or Saquon or anybody like that.
I think the thing to point here is, like, Derrick Henry was a monster, but it's hard to repeat that.
Absolutely.
How many guys, rush for 1,500 yards and then do it again?
Yeah.
I just think there's a chance. What if Tannehill's not good? Well, that will tank Henry's whole series. Nick Chubb. I love Nick Chubb, but now he has Kareem Hunt in the backfield. Yeah. How many rushing yards is he getting? Because he was awesome, but statistically he was not the same guy when Kareem Hunt was on the field.
Right. And for a running back, that's kind of there's a sweet spot of what you want.
Yeah.
You want a guy to come in to be behind you who is capable enough that they will feel comfortable giving him enough touches that you're not gassed every game and that you're not getting 40 carries a game. But you don't want him to be, so good that he takes away your carries.
Which is exactly what I think Alexander Mattison is.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think, right. It's definitely a great situation for Dalvin Cook. I definitely agree.
And we point to the other running backs. You mentioned Saquon. His offensive coordinator this year is Jason Garrett, and his head coach is Joe Judge on a year where there's no real offseason training coming into the system, and we have no idea what that offense is going to look like. And I think their defense is terrible.
Yeah. But I mean, if there's anything you can say about Jason Garrett, it's that he knows, what he has and how to feed an elite running back.
Yeah.
He did that.
I do think their defense is so bad. It's really going to be hard for Saquon to ever lead the league in rushing until they fix that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely not a great situation for him to be in New York. I don't think it's a good situation for anybody to be in New York, to be honest with you.
The Vikings have proven they're maybe not a 13-win team, but they have a good defense, and they like to control the ball, and they can win games. There's going to be a lot of games where their fourth quarter run the ball, Dalvin Cook pick up extra first downs.
Right.
I think it's very possible he leads the league in rushing.
I mean, it's possible. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying I wouldn't bet money on it.
Who would your pick be?
Zeke, probably.
Okay.
I don't think Dak's very good. So I think they're going to run the ball a lot.
Could easily happen.
Yeah. It also could very well not be Dak Prescott because he's, pulling a suck all the time about his contract every single day.
I'm also worried about Mike McCarthy. I think there's a chance they're super pass heavy.
Yeah. So, but I mean, even Mike McCarthy knows how to, figure it out. He'll have to, right? You can't just not feed Zeke. If you're getting 1,000 yards rushing out of Zeke, I would argue that that's not enough.
I totally agree. He needs 20 carries a game minimum.
Absolutely. and at least probably I'd say probably like 25 touches in total.
Yeah.
Whether that's like receiving out of the backfield or whatever. But they need to feed him, and I think they'll definitely figure it out. I think it'd be stupid not to be honest.
Then again, they lost pretty much every single game that they don't give him 20 carries. So
Exactly.
Who's your pick number 2 here? What do you got?
My pick number 2 is Teddy Bridgewater. I think that the Carolina Panthers are probably the most underrated team in the NFC, but maybe the most underrated team in the league this year. Pretty much every projection, every article I've read, and I understand the NFC South is super tough this year. With my boy TB12 going over to Tampa Bay. It hurt a lot. I'm just kidding. It hurt. It was like breakup. But I think Teddy Bridgewater has a really, really great situation there. So I think my projections for him are 3,500 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. And I'll tell you why. The first is the addition of Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson was an electric receiver in New York. And how they let him go is beyond me, because he was probably the best player on their offense.
I'm with you.
He was better than Le'Veon Bell.
I'm a Sam Darnold defender because it's embarrassing what they're doing to that guy.
Yeah. But, I mean, Robbie Anderson, great receiver. DJ Moore, also sort of a sleeper pick, but still, a great young receiver. And then obviously Christian McCaffrey, which is a great fit for Teddy Bridgewater because, as we saw, I mean, if you watch the film and if you watch the games with the Saints, he liked to he was okay with throwing checkdowns. He didn't take any unnecessary risks down the field, and he was okay throwing to, running backs and tight ends on like short routes and stuff. So Teddy Bridgewater makes his money on being efficient. He's not going to beat you with, having a huge arm or, doing this or that or whatever, being Patrick Mahomes out there. But he's efficient, and I definitely think he has the tools to do it for sure. What else do I have here? Yeah, that's pretty much it. I just think he's in a great situation there, and I think it's an extremely underrated offense specifically.
Here's why you definitely could be right. DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey could do all the work for him. Bridgewater had the lowest air yards per attempt last year.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily know that he has to change that. If
Right.
DJ Moore takes a couple to the house, great.
Yeah.
Christian McCaffrey, I mean, you're going to chuck the ball down to him 100 times in a season, so he's going to do all the work. Bridgewater could easily be a good fantasy quarterback just because of the guys he has around him.
Mm-hmm.
Here's why I could be wrong, though.
Yeah.
Matt Rule is the first-year head coach. He's proven to be a great rebuilder. He went to Temple. First 2 years, ugly. Third year, great. Goes to Baylor. First 2 years, ugly. Third year, great. And I don't think Baylor was any good. I don't know how he got him into I don't know how he got them into the Sugar Bowl. But his first 2 years, terrible. I could see Matt Rule going to Carolina, and it's just a rebuild. He's learning what he has. The defense was terrible last year. Maybe he doesn't take a lot of risks with Bridgewater. I could see Carolina being a 4-5 win team and then being really good the next year. Yeah. So that would be my concern is this is just a bad team and not a good offense, only because he's rebuilding the program.
Right. And I definitely agree with you, but I think if they do have problems this year, it won't be on the offensive side of the ball for that reason. I think they have, so many great underrated players, except for McCaffrey. McCaffrey's not underrated. But I think that with all the talent they have on offense and just the nature of Teddy Bridgewater as a quarterback, which is I'm going to make, 2 or 3 reads. I'm going to check it down if I need to. I'm going to be efficient. Can't go broke making a profit. And I think that's the kind of guy Teddy Bridgewater's been. I think that's the kind of guy Teddy Bridgewater's always been. And so, I mean, the numbers I projected, 3,500 yards, 26 touchdowns, 10 picks, they're not obviously crazy numbers or anything like that, but I definitely think he could be like your number 2 quarterback that you put in during a bye, or he could, if your quarterback gets hurt, he could definitely be a capable fantasy starter in my opinion.
This one for me, for my pick number 2, has a lot of different angles to it, but I'll try to get it out the best I can just because I think Arizona Cardinals are the sleeper team this year. I truly, truly believe that It's a really tough division, and I'm not sure they're a playoff team. However, I do think their offense will be a lot better. I think Kyler Murray's the top 3 fantasy quarterback this year. I think he runs for a lot of yards. I think he has a big-time breakout, and I think their offensive line's a lot better. Murray's first 8 games were a little shaky, but they were competitive at the back end of the year. They beat Seattle at the end of the year. They almost beat San Francisco at the end of the year. They were a really, really tough out. And I think Murray is a guy that he's got a really, really good arm, and he's one of the best high school quarterbacks of all time. He was an insane recruit.
His Allen tape is ridiculous.
It's nuts. Give him a second year in this Cliff Kingsbury offense. I think he could – I'm not saying this will happen, but what happened with Lamar Jackson getting significantly better is what could happen with Kyler Murray.
Right.
And the big go ahead. I'll let you chime in.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think he's a top 3, fantasy quarterback. I don't hate Kyler Murray. I don't think he's bad. I'm nervous about, whether or not Cliff Kingsbury's offense actually works in the NFL. Because
I'm with you.
It's not just a new offensive coordinator, right? It's pretty much a new scheme. The air raid has not really been run a whole lot successfully in the NFL. So, and I do think Cliff Kingsbury is a good coach. So I have a little bit of faith, I guess, but I don't think he's a top 3 guy. I could definitely name probably, 5 or 6 or 7 guys that I would probably take in fantasy over Kyler Murray.
I think more so than anything, the rushing potential is going to be there.
Right.
More the hidden cheat code in fantasy is quarterbacks that can run.
Right.
One of the reasons why Lamar Jackson was head and shoulders better than everybody else in fantasy is because of how many rushing opportunities he got. We were talking about quarterbacks that can run. How many pure runners are you taking ahead of Murray?
Not too many, but I would argue about Kyler Murray being a pure runner for sure.
I don't think he is a pure runner, but I'm saying his rushing potential is what can push him into that top 3 range.
Maybe Russell Wilson, but he doesn't run as much anymore. I mean, yeah, you're right, I suppose. I still don't think he's top 3, maybe top 5. I don't think there's any way that he's obviously not beating out Patrick Mahomes. He's obviously not beating out, Lamar Jackson. I don't think he's beating out Tom Brady with all those offensive threats that he has at Tampa Bay. I don't think that he's beating out Carson Wentz or Jared Goff or anybody like that.
The part 2 of this, and this is why I wanted to save it, is for some reason it feels like people have forgotten that the Arizona Cardinals have DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, that's huge. I don't know how people forget that.
We've gone through this whole offseason, and I haven't seen or read or watched any news article that says the Cardinals have DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah.
This is a guy that –
he's the best receiver in the league. It's no big deal. It's whatever.
Nobody's talking about it. It's crazy. It's not quite the same because the Patriots only gave up a 4th rounder for Randy Moss. But it feels like he could have a Randy Moss type of year.
Could, for sure. I think it all depends on Cliff Kingsbury.
I'm with you. 1,000%. I'm with you. I don't know if he's any good. But if this thing clicks, the potential of Hopkins in this offense, down the field constantly, big red zone threat, and who the hell else in Arizona is stealing his touchdowns? You got – yeah. Yeah. This is a guy, he's going to get 150 targets. He's going to be – Kyler Murray last year, he ran around for his life, and he didn't really know where to go with the football. All those third downs are going to Hopkins.
Yeah.
I just think that 1-2 punch right there is going to be a lot better than people think.
I think so too. And I definitely agree that the Cardinals will do better than I guess people think they will do. I think they'll be a better football team than people think they are. I just think it's really, really, really tough in that division.
I also want to say this, and then we can get to your next pick, but you have to almost jump on these things early.
Yeah.
Last year I said San Francisco was going to win the NFC West, and everybody looked at me like I had 4 eyes. Yeah. They won the NFC West. You got to jump on these things early. We don't see things coming in the NFL. It's not like the NBA where you can pretty much pen and paper who's going to be good. The NFL, we get surprises all the time. Chicago was up here, and then they suck. And who the hell thought Green Bay was going to win 13 games? And
Right.
things change constantly. You got to get ahead of these things. So
Right.
I think if you're going to pick a team that could be a lot better, I think Arizona is the one to watch.
Yeah, it could be, for sure. Could very well be correct. And I definitely think that Kyler Murray is going to be a special quarterback in the NFL. But like I said, I don't know if I'm willing. I don't know if I'd be willing to, gamble on Cliff Kingsbury. I think
that's the only red flag to me.
coaches are pretty smart in the NFL, and if they thought the air raid was going to work, they probably would have adopted it, 10, 15 years ago. But who knows? I could be wrong. I'm not the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. So, I mean, I think it all depends on him. I think that no matter what happens this year, they could go 0-16. I think Kyler Murray would still have the potential to be a super special quarterback.
All right, so we are on your pick number 3, I believe. What do you have here?
Joe Mixon. I have him for 1,200 yards rushing and 350 yards receiving, 9 total touchdowns. So my reasoning for this is that, first of all, something that not a lot of people have thought about, and I'm guilty of this too, because I was talking about when Joe Burrow got drafted, I was talking about, it's not a good situation for him. Their O-line's not great. They don't have a tackle that can, protect him. Jonah Williams is coming back off of injury. He can play guard and tackle. I don't know what they'll have him playing. But again, special offensive lineman at Texas. He was a first-round pick.
Alabama.
Or
Jonah Williams.
From Texas.
Connor Williams went to Texas.
Connor Williams, yeah. Sorry. Super special player. Now they're both, dogs.
Yeah.
So yeah, him coming back I think will be a good thing. Young quarterback means they're probably going to run the ball a lot more. I know they have AJ Green, but he's not getting any younger. And it's sort of been a downward trend for AJ Green in terms of just like how he looks. Statistically, that may not support it, but when you watch him on Sundays, it's, you can see every year him kind of going down a little bit. And that's fine because he's, pretty old for a receiver, especially for an elite receiver. So I think that they use Joe Mixon more in the passing game to sort of take the burden off of Joe Burrow a little bit. I think that the O-line's better, so he's going to get a little more rushing yards than he has in the past. And, just overall, I think they run the ball more, and Joe Mixon is the best player on that team. So I think you give it to your best guy, especially when you're trying to support a young quarterback that you don't want to put too much pressure on him and then maybe have him not be ready, and then you've wasted a first-round pick on a guy because you shot his confidence.
So I want to bring up some counterpoints because it's way more entertaining that way anyway. But I have Joe Mixon on my don't eat the cheese list. I would not draft Joe Mixon. And my golden rule number 1 in fantasy every single year is I do not want running backs on bad teams. If there's a tiebreaker between Saquon and Zeke, I think Dallas is going to be much better. Therefore, I want Zeke. When it comes to Joe Mixon, I think the Cincinnati Bengals could have the first pick again. I think they could be a 2-win team again. And I don't think it really matters if Joe Burrow's better than Andy Dalton or not. You're talking about a division with Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and I think Cleveland should. It's Cleveland, but should. It's a brutal division with 3 really good defenses. And their offensive line, while it's getting an upgrade, wasn't great last year. Even Mixon's yards per carry marks, maybe it's someone him, maybe it's someone on the offensive line. His yard per carry marks were very average. I think it was 4.1 or 4.2 last year. I'll have to go and double check, but his yards per carry marks were very average. They still have Giovanni Bernard, so maybe Mixon is the pass catching guy, but I don't necessarily think he takes all of that.
No.
I don't love running backs on bad teams. How many touchdowns is this guy getting? How many fourth quarter leads are they having where he's picking up extra 50 yards in the fourth quarter because they have a lead? So this one to me is, I think Mixon is one guy that's really, really overhyped.
See, I mean, I would agree with you if he didn't have such great stats last year and if he wasn't such a great fantasy option last year. But
he was also a guy of 2 halves. His first 8 games were brutal, and his last 8 games were really good for fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't spend like a first-round pick on him. Like, I guarantee you there's going to be a ton of people who pick Joe Mixon in the first round. Guaranteed. And it's not going to be a great decision, I don't think. I definitely think there's going to be running backs that are better than him that I would pick over him. But I definitely think it makes sense that if you have a young QB, you're probably going to run the ball more, especially when your running back is the second best, if not the best player on your team. So I definitely think that he's going to get more touches this year, just in general, because anytime you can have a running back that can help out in, the rushing game and the receiving game, it helps out a young quarterback a lot. And I think Cincinnati's going to be trying to do whatever they can to ease the burden on Joe Burrow with the defenses that he plays in that division.
So for my pick number 3 here, and last year I wrote all my combine articles and I said Deebo Samuel would be the best wide receiver in the draft last year. I still believe that to be the case. However, my pick for pick number 3 is a different player in that draft class, and that is DK Metcalf. I believe he turns full-blown monster this year. He turns into, and I wrote about this, if things break right for him, I don't know. I'm not saying he'll be this good. We've never seen somebody that looks and resembles Terrell Owens since DK Metcalf. And I'm not saying he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. All right, Terrell Owens was one of the best receivers ever to walk the face of the earth. However, I think he turns into that guy this year. He's the dude. Tyler Lockett's still there. I get it. Seattle, Brian Schottenheimer, for whatever reason, doesn't want to put the ball in Russell Wilson's hands. I get it. But last year, that playoff game against Philadelphia, I think we saw a really big sneak peek of what we're going to get out of Metcalf this year. He single-handedly won them the game, that playoff game against the Eagles last year. There's not many guys that are that big, that strong, and that fast. Heading into year 2, I think he really develops his game. He becomes a better route runner. And we're looking at a guy, if he catches 12 touchdowns, he goes over 1,300 yards. I'm not going to be surprised. I think he could easily be a top 10 wide receiver. And I think he's way, way undervalued because the potential, if things do go right, is a freak show.
Right. Absolutely. And that's why they drafted him, right? I mean, look at his combine. His combine is viral just because people see this guy and they think he's a Greek god. But I don't necessarily disagree. I just don't think it's going to be this year. I think that he needs one more year, especially with Tyler Lockett still there. I don't think Tyler Lockett will be there in a couple of years. I think that they'll either move on from him or he'll want to move on from them because they won't want to pay him, especially since DK Metcalf is there. But the pure athleticism and the measurables and just how unbelievably dominant he is physically, I think you have to, keep that in mind when you're talking about how good DK Metcalf's going to be. And I don't think quarterback-wise, I don't think there's really any better situation in the NFL if you're a receiver for maybe Tom Brady. But other than that, I think nobody knows in the NFL how to dish it to different receivers like Russell Wilson does. So, he's not really had a clear-cut number one for pretty much the whole time he's been in Seattle. So
I've been saying this all offseason. It's sort of, I guess, a hot take, but I don't think it really should be. I do think from a game-to-game basis, all season long, Russell Wilson was the best quarterback in football last year.
Absolutely.
Seattle had zero business winning 11 games last year.
No.
They had a plus 7-point differential in the whole year.
Yeah.
The reason why they won all those games is, hey, Russ, can you bail us out? Hey, can you do it once more? Hey, can you do it a third time? And every single time Russell Wilson delivered.
And that's the kind of player Russell Wilson's been kind of since he got there.
Yeah.
When was the last time Russell Wilson had a good offensive line in Seattle? Never. I don't think ever. So it's like, hey, Russ, we're going to have an offensive line for you, so you're going to have to run around a little bit. And he's sitting there like, okay. And they're like, yeah, we don't really have any great receivers for you either. So he's like, all right, bet. And he just goes out and it's the Super Bowl.
That's the thing, though. Like,
it's unreal, honestly, watching him play. And I think that the MVP is really a big popularity contest. And I think obviously when you have, a great quarterback like Lamar Jackson, who's a runner and looks like kind of like Michael Vick, but like kind of better than Michael Vick, low key. I think that that definitely, pulls away MVP votes from Russell Wilson. But I said since, Lamar Jackson got the MVP that I probably would have voted for Russell Wilson.
I would have voted for Russell Wilson too. But that's the biggest thing though. With these receivers, they're so quarterback dependent in terms of fantasy. I trust Russell Wilson. I'll trust Russell Wilson all day long to get him the football.
Pretty much nobody I trust more than Russell Wilson, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point. I could easily be a year early this year.
Yeah.
The breakout could easily happen next year.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think it's going to happen. It could easily happen next year. I do think it's going to happen though.
Yeah, I think it'll absolutely happen too. Like he looks like Calvin Johnson. It's ridiculous. Like the way he plays football reminds me of like watching. Obviously, I'm only 22 years old, so I wasn't really watching football for the whole time Calvin Johnson was in the league. But the tail end of his career, it looks a lot like DK Metcalf, except the difference is DK Metcalf doesn't look like he's 30 years old. So I definitely agree with you. I definitely think DK Metcalf is the guy when it comes to receivers in Seattle for the next few years at least. I do not think it's Tyler Lockett.
Me neither.
I think DK Metcalf is way better than Tyler Lockett already. The only thing Tyler Lockett does, obviously, well, that DK Metcalf doesn't really have in his toolbox is he's a returner.
Yeah.
Right. You can't say he's a better deep threat. DK Metcalf ran like a 4.3 or something stupid. And you can't say he's obviously better physically because he's just not. DK Metcalf.
He might be a little bit better in the short, like, change of direction. That
might be a little bit shiftier.
Yeah.
That's it. But how many times do you want DK Metcalf to run a drag? If I have DK Metcalf, he's running goes and posts and corners. Right. So.
All right. It's that time of the week.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Who the fuck is that guy? Guy you never heard of, guy you never draft. Somehow, some way, he will win you your fantasy league. Cayne, let's go to you here first. What is your selection this week?
My selection is actually a rookie. It's Albert Okwuegbunam.
Okwuegbunam. I like it.
I was trying to I was dreading when I had to say his name on here. It's tough. But so, I mean, on the surface, this is a guy that if I hadn't looked into it, I probably wouldn't have drafted. Just because he is a 4th-round pick, went to the Broncos. Obviously, the Broncos drafted Noah Fant, and he's been great for them for the past, past couple years. I forget what year he was drafted. But he's the clear-cut number 1 at tight end for them. The reason I think Okwuegbunam will get, a lot more touches than a lot of people think is because they're going to want to line up and run the football in Denver there, right? Drew Lock is anything but a proven starter. And I think, like I said with Joe Burrow, I think they're going to try to lessen the burden on him. And there's a ton of great receiving threats there, but the thing about both Okwuegbunam and Noah Fant is they're both pretty versatile as tight ends. They can both line up in the slot and play receiver a little bit more. And they can both run block pretty well. Okwuegbunam, we don't have a whole lot of tape on that, but I think he did pretty well at Missouri when you look at it. I'm looking at the PFF page right now, and it says that he didn't get very many touches or opportunities to, run block at Missouri, but when he did, he made the most of them. And so I just think, obviously, being the number 2 tight end on the team is not by any means like you're sitting on the bench for the whole season, right? There's 2 tight end sets. There's 1 tight end sense where Noah Fant lines up in the slot and you still have a tight end. And there's all these different ways that Albert Okwuegbunam, especially with his skill set, being so athletic, being such a good vertical threat, definitely a ton of situations where he could get in and get touches.
I love this pick. And fun fact, Drew Lock was college teammates with Albert O.
Yep.
So they already have that connection there. And this is a guy that 2 years ago was projected to maybe be a 2nd-round pick. He loses his college quarterback, and he's not the same. Well, that happens to a lot of guys in college. They need good quarterback play. Kelly Bryant, I mean, he couldn't throw the ball more than 5 yards down the field.
No, he's definitely not. Drew Lock, I think what people forget is that Drew Lock was a special quarterback for Missouri.
Yeah, and we're also talking about Missouri, who 10 times a year are getting their ass kicked.
Right.
Tough
place to play.
Yeah. So a guy like that can easily be lost because, I mean, you're at Missouri, you got bad quarterback play. It's easy to fall under the radar. He's also a guy that ran like a low 4.5, who's that big.
And he probably would have been forgotten if he didn't have such a great combine, because he is 6'4" and 255 pounds and running hold on, I'm in the wrong person. Yeah, 6'5", 258 pounds, and he's running a 4.4. Like, that's freaky. And I mean, that's obviously why they drafted him. I think he very well could have gotten forgotten if he didn't have such a great combine, or if he didn't necessarily have like that same kind of size speed combo. But I mean, he's more athletic than Noah Fant.
That's exactly where I was going to go with it. Sounds crazy, and I'm not saying it'll happen. I'll give it a 15% chance it happens. I think there's a 15% chance he's better than Noah Fant.
I could definitely see it happening. I think Noah Fant's pretty good.
Yeah.
But
he also can't catch.
I could 100% see it being maybe not the same level as like a Gronk Hernandez type deal, but I could definitely see that happening, because it's the same kind of situation, right? You have two guys who come in. You have one guy who's, a first-round pick, and the next guy who's a fourth-round pick. They both come in. They complement each other beautifully, and they're both, just big, athletic tight ends that can get the job done in pretty much any situation you put them in. So I could definitely see it being a lot like the Patriots with Aaron Hernandez and Gronk.
I'm with you.
That's my, that's the first thing that popped into my head when I first came up with this whole, maybe Okabunam isn't going to be, get 10 catches this year. He might get 30 catches or 40 catches. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm with you. I like that pick a lot. My pick this week it's a little bit of a weaker pick, but I'm going to go with Brian Hill. He's the backup running back for Atlanta.
Right.
I just think with Todd Gurley, do we really know which guy we're getting? No. They say he's healthy, but then it seems like whoever has him changes his mind that he's not healthy. Somehow he played all six.
Todd Gurley ever really fully healthy?
Somehow he played all 16 games last year, but it wasn't pretty. His yard per carry numbers were terrible.
Yeah.
He didn't rush for 1,000 yards, despite he had like 225 touches last year and still didn't rush for 1,000 yards.
Right.
Brian Hill's not a guy who's super known. Went to Wyoming. He was on that team with Josh Allen. But 2018, 7.9 yards a carry. 2019, 4.1, which is not as good. But I think he does have some talent. Has a little plus speed to him. And he can catch the ball out of the backfield. I just think there's a very good chance. Gurley's done. Brian Hill's the lead back.
100%. It's the exact same thing that happened last year with Boston Scott getting the opportunity in Philadelphia, and he did great things with it. So I mean, it's very likely. You're right. I was just talking about earlier how I don't really have a whole lot of faith that guys will be exactly the same after like knee issues, and Todd Gurley is no different. He's been hurt all the time. He's great when he's on the field sometimes, but other times he just looks like he's playing hurt. And so I definitely think it's more than likely that that he will get less carries this year, just because maybe he won't be hurt, but they won't want to get him hurt is the point. They want to, like, Atlanta is a team that wants to make the playoffs. They're not a team like, let's say he was on the Jacksonville Jaguars. They'd be giving him as many carries as possible because they're going to go 4-12 this year. Maybe not even.
Yeah.
Whereas the Atlanta Falcons actually have a chance every year to maybe think about, okay, maybe we want to save our guys, especially at the running back position, for the playoffs a little bit. Especially a guy like Todd Gurley, who, seems like he couldn't stay on the field if he tried.
Yeah, I'm with you. Do we have anything else this week?
No.
Any closing thoughts?
No, I mean, I think that it's going to be a very interesting season for Washington. We were talking about the Derrius Guice Washington football team. I almost just said Redskins. My bad.
I've been doing it the whole time too.
I can't get my head around it. I'm sorry. They've been a team for like 30 years, and
at least have a new name ready.
Yeah, exactly. This isn't a new thing. It's coming up for the team. Pretty much ever since Dan Snyder's been the owner of that team, it's been like, hey, you should probably change the name. And he's been like, nope. So, I mean, if it were me, I probably would have thought ahead a little bit. But I think it's going to be a really interesting season, not even just in the running back room for Washington. I think it's definitely going to be, Dwayne Haskins make it or break a year. I don't think it should be his make it or break a year because I don't think he really got a great chance to succeed last year.
Not at all.
And everybody's sort of, swept him under the rug saying he's a bust and all this stuff. Dwayne Haskins was a very pro-ready quarterback when he came into the league, I thought. Only thing is that it's really hard as a rookie to come in and just ball out on a team like Washington where they have holes on their roster like Swiss cheese.
And their coach gets fired mid-season, and you get a whole new playbook.
Very, very tough situation there. So I really hope that there's a little bit more stability and a little bit more support for Dwayne Haskins this year. Because, I mean, as much as it hurts me to say it as a Michigan fan, I do think he's a good quarterback. And it pains me when young quarterbacks just sort of don't really get their shot.
It's a hell of a lot better than JT Barrett was.
Yes, 100%. But it always hurts me when I see quarterbacks who have that much potential just get swept under the rug and not really get an opportunity again. Like Paxton Lynch was like that. I think Paxton Lynch had a lot of upside. And he played in 6 games, and they were like, we're going to move on from this guy.
Yeah. All right, Cayne, great first appearance for you, I thought. Definitely held your own. Make sure to follow Cayne Lander. I think that's your Twitter again.
Yep, just at Cayne Lander, CayneLander.
Make sure to follow Cayne. I am Trey Daubert. Of course, the website is down, but we will be back better than ever. It sucks that it's down, but it's great that we're killing it. So big things are ahead for the site. Of course, we're brought to you by VendettaSportsMedia.com. Until next time, we will see you soon.